the internet at this point is half cat videos and stuff, right? Like we know that people love nature. We know that people love animals.
Yeah.
But it's just taking that next step of like, you have a genuine interest. Okay, here's a little bit more of a fact about this. Here's a little bit more of a fact about that. But it's swaying that big chunk in the middle that are interested but don't really know how to get involved. And as I said, maybe that's because they feel that, you know, they're not smart enough to be involved in nature or whatever it is, or they live in the middle of a city and they can't access it too much. Maybe the only, you know, wildlife they see is squirrels and pigeons. But, you know, wherever you are in your life and whatever you love about animals, you know, I think it's just so important to be able to try and reach everybody that is curious about it, right? So including the people with influence. So
welcome to another episode of Animals, Nature, and You. This upcoming conversation, I think if you are a zookeeper or in the animal care world or in conservation or even a naturalist, you're going to recognize bits of yourself in this conversation. If you are the outside of that, you aren't doing that for a living yet, you're thinking about it, or you just enjoy these conversations, you're going to see behind the scenes a little bit of just how passionate people are about the work they do. I can say from my own experience, often we're told we're doing too much by those outside of this work, in that it's perhaps a family member saying, why do you dedicate so much of your life? Why do you work so many hours on the clock, off the clock? Your days off, etc., are dedicated to doing all this work. It's because it's a work of passion. And we tend to continuously see the need for the work we love doing and how it's impactful, so we want to do more. Alice Vassallo is no different. She's my guest today, and Alice is a seasoned zookeeper from the UK, and she serves as the director of the Keeper Educational Exchange Program known as KEEP. It's a small NGO dedicated to training and connecting the zookeeping industry worldwide, which personally I have to say, side note, really excited that it's worldwide, because I remember when she was just starting this program out and it was more UK-based, and now she's conquering the world, if you will. She is also the ambassador for the Clouded Leopard Working Group, a charity based in Nepal that works to protect the two subspecies of clouded leopard. Then, off the back of her work as the conservation coordinator for Matt Lawrence, Alice's newest venture, yes, she's doing even more, Pardalis Talent, has her connecting established talent with wildlife conservation projects that need a voice. And what a great connection to make. You can also find her nature comedy podcast exploring our relationship with Mother Nature's least loved creatures. It's called, and cover the kids' ears if you don't like curse words, Asshole Animals with Alice on Spotify and Apple. And this is actually where I first met her. I was invited to be on her podcast years ago. And I was like, oh, the name. I'm not sure I can say bad things about animals as a spokesperson for the San Diego Zoo. But nonetheless, we made it work. I got to be on her show. And now Alice gets to be on mine. So Alice, I have to say, thank you so very much for taking the time to be on Animals, Nature, and You. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, Rick, I've got to return the favor, right? You did me a favor all those years ago. I say all those years. It was a couple of years ago of coming on my podcast.
Yeah, it seems like a
but
lifetime ago.
But I feel like I've known you forever. Like, I feel like, you know, you and I just talk, and it's great, and it feels like old friends catching up. So, of course,
really
when you asked, I was like, absolutely, say less. I'll be there.
Well, I appreciate you tremendously. For those listening and watching here as my audience, Alice, you've had a podcast, Animal, what is, remind me?
Asshole Animals.
I almost said Animal Assholes, but that doesn't sound right. Right. And so it's comedy. It's a good time about animals. Yeah. And you interviewed all sorts of people. And it was so funny when you asked me on, as often. So I was with the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance at the time.
Yes.
So I would go through and I would review, okay, what's the show about? What's it like? And I'm like, PR rep, this is kind of edgier than we normally do, because it's kind of a conservative organization when it comes to that side of stuff, especially back then. It's changed a little bit. And I remember, I was talking to you before we were recording, I can't always say bad things about the animal, but we had a good time. We had a good time.
And, first of all, I was so surprised, pleasantly surprised that San Diego said yes. Because I was fully expecting them to be like, you know what, using the term arsehole, as I would say, or asshole in the American sort of style, to describe an animal, even in jest, which is the sort of point of the podcast. So the point of the show started as a means to sort of gently poke fun at Mother Nature, right? To say that, we're not supposed to love all animals equally. That's just not how it goes. And here are some examples of animals that maybe people don't realize have a more cheeky side to them. Let's be more politically correct. Cheeky, sassy sort of
There
side
you
to them.
go.
And so it originally started with that sort of thing in mind. And, very quickly I gleaned that it could turn into an opportunity to change minds the other way. So rather than me being like, hey, this animal that you know and love actually can be kind of a jerk sometimes, it actually turned into the more of the other way around of like, hey, this animal that you don't like too much, that, you've got beef with, this is why you should like them. So I think we did a bit of both on the podcast to sort of, depending on the sort of who I had on and the sort of the tone, but it was a really fun opportunity to just be like, and this is why I love that you suggested opossums, because, first of all, I love them. I have such a big place in my heart for opossums, but I know that, a lot of Americans, are like, shaking their fists at opossums in their yard or in their trash cans, right? And so I was like, this is perfect. Like an animal that people aren't maybe super thrilled to see. I don't know, unless they've got the babies on the back, maybe people like them. I don't know. But, I would be delighted to see an opossum. We don't have them, obviously, in the UK. I'd be delighted to see an opossum, but I know that most Americans would be like, damn it, the opossum's in the trash again, so it was a really great chance. And I really do want to thank you for coming on all those years ago to sort of, to have a bit of a joke and have a bit of a laugh, but also get some messages across about why we should like these animals,
Oh, absolutely. That's what I appreciated about you too, is you were approaching it with sort of that cheeky attitude, and yes, not every animal is what we would consider cuddly or nice or whatever. Even those like the people do think are cuddly and nice, they do have their edge sometimes.
Absolutely.
And it's an opportunity to educate in a fun way. And I really appreciate what you did over the years with the podcast too, is you had other talents and people that weren't necessarily from the animal world on also. And you blended that joy you have of performance and comedy and animals together, which is what I just admire so much when science communicators can do that, because I think you reach a broader audience to that point.
Absolutely. They're so right. And I think that's such a great point to make, is that, and this is a hill I will die on. And I'm so sorry that, like, if I offend anybody in the audience, I'm so sorry. But this is the hill I will die on, is that we need to be doing different things with nature education when it comes to media. And, don't get me wrong. And again, I'm going to get crucified by the UK for this, because we have, per capita, probably more naturalists than anybody else in the world, right? Like, we have so many greats that come from the UK that are dedicated, nature presenters and things like that. And obviously the great Dave, but as we call him, Big Dave in the UK, David Attenborough. But I honestly do think that whilst the nature documentaries are great, and, that's fine if you've got, the attention span to sit and watch the nature documentaries. I think they're fantastic. They're beautifully shot. But we need to do something different. We need to do something different with it, just because how we consume media nowadays is so vastly different to when those nature documentaries first started coming out. And, weaving comedy is how I found when I was doing talks at the zoo, at many of my zoos in the past, that I could reach people more effectively. If I could sort of, tongue in cheek, have a bit of a laugh with the audience when I was talking, still telling facts and things like that. But I worked with a tiger called Keleboo. And one of my favorite jokes to tell about Keleboo was that, Keleboo doesn't care if we live or die, like the keepers, and people found that hilarious. Every single time I was like, this tiger loves her keepers. And so our tiger Rana loves her keepers. She loves to like engage with training with us. Her daughter doesn't care if we live or die. And like, people just found that so funny, because it's just, they're like, oh, that tiger just is so indifferent to its keepers. And, they're instantly like, okay, I want to learn more about this. I want to know. And they stick around for the conservation parts once you've got them with the personality. So the idea of sort of meshing comedy and animals just was, I was like, why is nobody doing this? We need to be engaging with like the middle people, right? We've got the animal lovers on one side. We've got the people that maybe aren't so keen on the natural world on the other side. We've got this big chunk of people in the middle that are curious about nature, know some things about it, but maybe want to learn more. How do we reach those guys? So I always think comedy is a great thing for that.
Absolutely agree. And to your point, we can have all the wonderfully shot, beautiful, engaging documentaries out there.
Absolutely.
But for people like you and I who have a natural desire to want to learn more or engage with that content, we seek it out.
Oh, yeah,
we
totally.
We look for it. you and I both know as educators and science communicators,
Mm-hmm.
it's the people who aren't seeking us out. We need their attention too. We need to hook them in and get them to the point where they want to learn more. And that's one thing I think you did a great job with the podcast. But I have to say, as much as we're talking about your podcast here, I want my audience to also know and look, I'll put the links down for your podcast so people can check it out.
Sure.
You are dialing it down though. You are moving towards other things.
Absolutely, yes, and it's not something that I decided. I woke up one day and was like, oh, done, done with that. It's honestly that just so many other things have come up, and my time is dwindling depending on which project I'm sort of focusing my attention on. So, and this firsthand, Rick. I don't need to tell you, putting together a podcast is a lot of work, right? Yeah. Like, the people that are doing it solo, who don't have the fantastic teams, the writers, the people putting it out on the socials, the editors, everything like that. It's a lot of work to put together, and you really do put a lot of yourself into it and a lot of your time and effort. So, if I could get paid to do that and just do that, oh my God, talking to people like you all the time, like what better job is there? And this, I think you'll find the joy in podcasting as well. Like, you just get to connect with this amazing group of people. It's just such a rewarding part of doing podcasting, but it is a lot of work, so
it is.
yeah. And I don't know about you, I take on 1,000 things. I'm like, I want to help that, I want to do this. I wish I could clone myself sometimes. I wish I could split into like 3 Alices to cover more ground.
Okay, so with that, there's a couple things I want to talk about your history, how you got to where you are, but also then I don't want to, I feel like we are on the verge of finding out like, what are these other things you're heading into?
Yeah, sure.
Let's start with, so dear audience, hang with us, a little cliffhanger here. We're going to talk about what it is that's come up that has created Alice to have to decide what's more important, where to pour her energy. And since she cannot be cloned, we will get to that in a second. I want to also talk about, so my audience understands where you're coming from.
Sure.
You have worked at multiple zoos. You've lived in Costa Rica for a while. You do travel for conservation. So give us sort of the quick rundown of your history of how you got to where you are now and where this passion for animals came from and everything else.
Okay, dear audience, I'm going to do the best I can, given the fact that I must have ADHD symptoms. I will go on 1,000 tangents, but I'm going to try and keep it on the narrow, and we're going to stick to the question that you asked. So, hi guys, I'm Alice. I'm a zookeeper. I've been a zookeeper for the last 12 years of my life. I work part-time as a zookeeper now in a small zoo in North London, very near to London Zoo, but not connected with it. So where to begin? I got into zookeeping starting at the fabulous ZSL London Zoo, right? Which is an iconic zoo to be your first zoo to work at. And I've moved around. I've been very fortunate enough to move around to different zoos within the UK over in that time, in the last 12 years, including a stint, as you rightly said, in Costa Rica doing wildlife rehabilitation. I'm a big toucan person. Toucans are my big love. And, Costa Rica is a great place to see toucans. If you haven't been already, do visit. It's beautiful. It's lovely. We love it. But nowadays, in the last sort of, I'd say 3 to 4 years after I found myself, comfortable with zookeeping as a profession and sort of found my feet and, you get comfortable in your job and you know what you're doing and you feel confident in yourself, after learning the ropes. I found myself wanting to contribute to other projects, other things in the grand scheme of things. So, I love the sort of day-to-day stuff of zookeeping and, fresh air, getting out and, working with these incredible animals, getting your steps in, being active, all of the amazing things that make zookeeping a very worthwhile profession, right? But I was getting this sort of pang of like, what can I do that sort of impacts everybody on a larger scale, And it's great to be able to impact the animals' lives, but I also kind of want to impact the zookeepers' lives as well. So, it was 6 years ago in October. I was looking at my watch there, just like, oh my God, where has the time gone?
Right.
Bloody hell. During the pandemic, actually, or during the year of COVID in 2020, a zoo colleague of mine and myself, we started setting up what is now the Keeper Educational Exchange Program, or KEEP, which is we are small NGO, but we organise for zookeepers to spend a few days or a few weeks at other zoos, other aquariums to swap practices, techniques, network, bring everybody a little bit closer together, sort of gain new skills, learn new things, exchange ideas, right? So we've been running that officially. It launched properly. It took us 3 years. I mean, the pandemic was bloody 2 years.
Great timing. Great timing. Yeah,
I know, right? Way to swap keepers when the whole world shuts down and no one wants to be within 2 feet of each other. So we had to wait until everything was sort of more safe to get back out there. So we launched in 2023. I would say, hand on heart, the Keeper Exchange program is probably when I die, probably the thing I'm most proud of, because I've just, as a result of setting up this program that started in the UK and now will be launching in America, we're looking to launch it in Latin America, in hopefully Australia and New Zealand, South Africa. We've been in touch with so many different zoo associations and zookeeper associations worldwide that, it's just an honor and a privilege to be able to get to know so many fantastic keepers and curators, directors that are all passionate about zookeeper learning and zookeeper happiness. So that's one project. I'm also the ambassador for the cloud. I'm gonna roll through these guys. I'm gonna roll through them.
Yeah.
The Keeper Exchange was the big one. I'm also the ambassador for a small charity called the Clouded Leopard Working Group. If toucans are number one, clouded leopards are number two in my heart and in my soul. And with them, I do some sort of fundraising and sort of awareness of clouded leopards, first of all, because they're a brilliant cat, as you know, Rick. They're absolutely incredible species of cat, but not a lot of people who aren't animal people know about clouded leopards, right? I don't think if I showed anyone on the street a picture of a clouded leopard and said, "What's this?" I don't think a couple of people would really even get it. And so I do a lot of awareness about clouded leopards, but also fundraising for their cause as well. I speak at different conferences, try and get the charity more involved with not only UK and European zoos, but American zoos as well that house clouded leopards. So that's a bit of another sort of networky, speaking to different zoos thing where I'm just talking to them and be like, hey, do you guys want to support a clouded leopard charity? I know a really good one. So there's that. Clouded leopards. Cool. Two down. Arsehole Animals we've talked about, which is a podcast that you can check out, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. If you love nature, if you love comedy, go check that out. The fabulous Rick is on episode 6, I believe, talking about opossums. Yeah, there it is. I looked up before because I was like, I know we talked about opossums, but like, what episode was that? Episode 6, check us out. That was fantastic. And the last project, we're nearly done, I'm nearly out of breath, is my latest venture, which I've set up this year. So over the last year or so, I've been working really closely with an actor called Matt Lawrence. Now, Matt Lawrence has been in things like Mrs. Doubtfire, Boy Meets World is probably where he's maybe most known from. If you like anime, then Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a Studio Ghibli film. He's got a role in that, which I'm a big fan of. He's been in a lot of The Hot Chick. If you're into like early 2000s kind of like comedies, The Hot Chick is iconic. He's done a lot of cool stuff over the years. He's a 90s child actor, but he's very passionate about reptiles and amphibians. So He came on Arsehole Animals. He's an Arsehole Animals alumni, like Rick is. And he came on the show last year to talk about iguanas and how they are a bit of a problem in Florida. And, should we dislike iguanas? Because they're a little bit of a pest species in Florida, right? And we got talking, we got chatting, and we decided to work together because Matt needed some help being introduced to the conservation world. And some of the first people I pointed him in the direction of was Rick, and Marco from San Diego. I said, you need to meet San Diego Zoo and you need to meet the guys there. So Matt's been enjoying his time getting to know the wildlife world, the conservation world. And we travel around the world together to sort of meet projects, to sort of use Matt's platform to shine a light on what they're doing, right? To get some eyes on their project and hopefully some financial support. Yeah. So off of the back of that, I know I'm trying to go as fast as I can with this. Oh my gosh.
It's all right.
Okay, take a breath.
Take a breath.
So off the back of working with Matt over the last year and introducing him to the wild world of wild people, and helping him find his tribe in the wildlife conservation world and in the zoo world as well. I was like, okay, well, maybe there are some other people in the entertainment industry who, like Matt, have always wanted to sort of get into learning a bit more about wildlife conservation, perhaps linking up with a project, perhaps going out to a project, anything like that, but they don't really know where to start. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of projects that need help. The average publicist or the average talent agent isn't going to know which is an ethical charity or not. They're just kind of going to do their Googling and the first one that comes up, how about this one? So I said, okay, maybe there's some people out there that I can reach with this, with the, Rolodex of contacts that I've made from the Keeper Exchange program, from zookeeping, from being a chatty extrovert, and meeting people
I mean,
at conferences.
Chatty?
Say it ain't so. I was like, how can I use all of these amazing people I've met over the years to, how can I link them up? I just love being the great connector. Like if I could point to one superpower I have, it's like meeting and connecting people and putting people together or recognizing patterns and saying, oh yeah, you want to learn about this, you should talk to this person. Okay, great. That I think is a good skill to have. And I think, so I've launched something this year off of the back of the work with Matt called Pardalis Talent. Now, the word Pardalis is a Latin word and it means pertaining to a leopard. So Pardus is the Latin word for leopard or panther, and Alice as a suffix ALIS means pertaining to. And I know this because I took 10 years of Latin in school.
So yeah, you might know.
In another life. And so Alice is also my name. So
really?
I love it. So I thought Pardalis, pertaining to a leopard. And even though clouded leopards aren't technically leopards, they are, it's a close enough link between a leopard and Alice. Pardalis is already a Latin name. And you can find ocelots have the sort of the second part of their Latin name is Pardalis, as well as panther chameleons, as well as leopard tortoises. And I just thought, I just love that idea. I was like, Pardalis is it's a bit of me, it's a bit of leopard. Let's go. So Pardalis Talent is the combination of that. So that launched. I announced it like a week ago, I think.
Yeah. So when this comes out, it'll be a few weeks. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was very recent. Very recent.
Within the last month, yes. So Matt and I are actually going to be working on this together. Matt benefits from having a sort of a wide network that spanned over the years of his different projects or just friends that he's met over the years, which is great. And ultimately, I just want to connect people that have a voice and have a platform to the people that need it. So I want as many eyes as possible on the small projects, right? We're not going to be donating to WWF. WWF are fine, okay? They've got, if their CEO is getting a bonus or whatever, I'm sure they're fine.
They're good.
But smaller projects, is where we're sort of focusing on. So anytime I can get someone to, have a meaningful interaction with an animal, whether it's going on a trip, whether it's going to a great zoo like San Diego Zoo or anything like that, that's how I want people to connect to wildlife. But it's just, having a friendly face that, I'm not a scientist by any means. I'm a zookeeper with a heart of gold. And, having that sort of approachable face that's just friendly and like, yeah, come on, let's go see some animals and not, I don't know if you find this, Rick. This is a slight tangent. Sometimes I think the way that I want to open up nature education to everybody is making things more accessible, because I think a lot of nature language isn't inherently accessible to a lot of people.
I agree completely. Absolutely, yes.
So,
one of the things, when I was an instructor, I'm going to interrupt real quick. When I was an instructor at Moore Park College, one of the first things, because I would teach wildlife education, in other words, how do you connect your knowledge to somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
First lesson, never use scientific names, period.
Yeah.
Because it is appropriate to understand the roots and understand the bigger picture when it comes to the Latin terms and the Latin names and who's related to who through taxonomy. But the average person hears that and it's nothing they can approach. They don't know what it means. So don't impress people with what you know, meet them where they are, and then educate them to know what you know. And so, I am right on board exactly with what you're saying.
Like if you're using the words, if I'm trying to get someone on board to, work with a conservation project or be excited about a specific animal, I'm not going to use words like endemic. like endemic,
In
granted,
situ.
yeah, exactly, in situ, exactly right. It's so language that we as animal people, that's part of
Yeah.
our vernacular, right? We use that all the time. But I'm saying, projects in the wild, or I'm saying they're native to this area, because you've just got to think that there's already a lot of barriers, I think, for some people to whether it's geographically where they live, whether it's culturally, that prevents people from getting close to nature. And you
Yeah.
don't want your language to be one of them. So you're completely
Mhm.
right. I absolutely love that. The lesson of stop trying to show off to the average person that Latin names about things. Just level with people. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
totally right.
Yeah.
But
No,
that
that's
okay,
great. And I
that's a
I
summary.
love what your direction is with this project you have going on with Matt, in the sense that, I was fortunate enough, through you actually, was a guest on his podcast with Marco back
Yes.
when I was working for the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance still. And then Matt and I have stayed in touch.
Yes.
And I've kept up with what he's doing, and it's been
Yeah.
great to see. And this is what is so lovely, is a lot of people that find themselves in a world that is the entertainment world or the business world. So what I have in my career, I've met a lot of famous people,
Yeah.
musicians, actors, whatever. I've done presentations for large organizations that love to donate money because they don't know what else to do.
Of
So
course.
here's a banking industry or real estate industry or other businesses that want to do something, but all they know how to do is write a check.
Yes.
But when you can show up and start, "Hey, actually, here's other things you can do as well."
Yeah.
And to your point, what you're talking about with this new venture you have going on is that people who already have a platform, already have an audience, and they care about wildlife, but they don't know what the right steps are. To show them the right
Yes.
steps is so powerful, because now you allow them to share with their audience the
Yeah.
correct and appropriate information about conservation, about wildlife, how to become more in touch with your local native wildlife and things like that. So
Yes.
I love, 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 love what you're doing. I think it's so
Oh,
important and so needed. And that's what I one of the reasons I wanted you on the podcast, obviously, other than you're just a
oh.
great soul in general,
I
is that
appreciate you.
I think what you're doing is so great. And part of this podcast, and I know, dear audience, I'm so sorry for being redundant on this. Animals, Nature, and You, the acronym is ANY, ANY.
Yes.
Anyone can do conservation. Anyone can be a part of
Yes.
conservation anytime,
Yes.
anywhere. It's just a matter of having the ability to have access and awareness about what that looks like. And that's really what you're doing at a grand
Oh, I love
scale,
that.
honestly. And I think it's wonderful.
I mean, I think it's one thing, and it's important, as I said, to reach those people who are curious. That
Mhm.
big group in the middle of us, between the
Yeah.
nature nerds and the people who are like, you know what, nature, I'm good. I'm
Right.
I'm going to be indoors if you need me. But there's such a big chunk, and I believe kids, every kid, unless it's kind of taught out of them, or disciplined out of them, are bio curious, right? They're
Yeah.
curious about the natural world, and I think so many people, because the internet at this point is half cat videos and stuff, right? Like we know that people love nature, we know that people love animals,
Yeah.
but it's just taking that next step of like, you have a genuine interest, okay, here's a little bit more of a fact about this, here's a little bit more of a fact about that, but it's swaying that big chunk in the middle that are interested but don't really know how to get involved. And as I said, maybe that's because they feel that they're not smart enough to be involved in nature, or whatever it is, or they live in the middle of a city and they can't access it too much. Maybe the only wildlife they see is squirrels and pigeons. But wherever you are in your life and whatever you love about animals, I think it's just so important to be able to try and reach everybody that is curious about it, right? So including the people with influence. So I've learned so many lessons with Matt. Matt is, and you've met Matt. Matt can just talk about animals till the cows come home. He can
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about reptiles and amphibians till
Yeah.
the cows come home. And and he loved meeting you and Marco, like, because it's like, now I have all of these facts that can go somewhere to people.
Oh,
that
yeah. When we showed up, he couldn't wait to show us the animals he had and talk. I mean,
Yes.
he just lit up. And I remember during the episode of their podcast that we were on, even his brothers were like, "Oh, he's in heaven right now. This is his world."
Yes, that's it. And there's so many people in the entertainment space, whether it's music, film, television, whatever it is, that are like that. And
Oh, yeah,
Matt
yeah.
has, grew up in he was a child actor, right? So this has been his job since all he could remember. And, him telling stories about wanting to be outside and being on set somewhere and being like, no, I want to go out and like look for lizards or look for frogs and things like that, kind of breaks my heart, because I'm like, we found those people that are our tribe with who love nature, but so it's now time to introduce Matt to his tribe. And I love, and he speaks so fondly about like you and Marco coming to the house, and he loves you guys, as I said. So there's more people out there like that have the voice and have the eyes on their work that can, really make the impact and help change people's minds. Yeah. And the great thing about it is that I'm a self-confessed non-expert on things, right? I'm not the world's leading expert on clouded leopards or, zookeeping or anything like that, but I can point everybody to people who are like I as I said, I loved being the great connector. I'm like, you want to know about sloths? Great, I got the expert on sloths over here. You want to know about Asian water buffalo? Great, I know about someone who knows loads about that. So I just love connecting people, man. That's just like the best thing in the world, is just seeing the payoff of relationships grow because of people that you've linked up. That's just great.
I love that. I love that. So let me ask you this though, because as much as we're talking about everybody else and connecting people and all of that, you are my guest. So I need to ask you, because, you're saying you're not the expert on things. And I get that. I totally get that. There are people that know way more than you and I do about very specific things. We have more of a broad brush because we're curious about so many things. You had said you've worked at a wide variety of zoos. I have two questions about that. But first question is, what got you started? So I know for me, I always gravitated towards animals. And as soon as I learned you could make a living being around animals, I was like, sign me up. I'm there. I'm done. Yeah. I knew exactly what I was doing starting in middle school. I knew exactly where I was going to college. I knew exactly what I was going to do for a living. So was that everyone has a different sort of how they got into this line of work story. Was that yours also? Or how did you get that first zoo job?
Yeah, great question. So, no, I had the complete opposite experience to you. And I'm a little envious of your experience, because I think, I am, because I think the idea of knowing what you want to do when you're young is a gift, and having
absolutely.
that calling, and being like, this is it. Oh, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. Let's go. Now I know where to go. So I graduated at 18 from my school, and I went to a really kind of I'm from the UK. You can tell from my accent, hopefully.
No,
and,
what?
What?
I thought you were just from Canada or something.
Yeah, I'm just from Virginia. But I'm from the UK. So, and I went to and I will say a very posh private school, right? Where the bar was very high in terms of what they expected of us, because it was a school where the parents put in a lot of money for their kids to succeed, right? I was very fortunate enough to go to that school. My family could afford to send me to that school. But with that privilege came the expectation of, if you are not at a certain level of job, i.e. a doctor or a lawyer or working in finance, then you have failed. You have failed, So the pressure was really on. And, I found a lot of comfort in sort of more of the I want to say the left brain sort of thing, so like art, drama and English and history and things like that. So I graduated from school and did classics, did Latin and Greeks and Romans at university. I loved ancient history. It's looking back now, I wish I could slap myself in the back of the head and say, what were you doing? Because unless ancient Rome is hiring, who is going to want a person with a Latin degree?
Last I checked,
they're not. If anyone knows if ancient Rome are hiring, I do have those qualifications, just in case zookeeping doesn't work out. And but I was 18 and I just wanted to do what I was good at and I liked, and that didn't translate necessarily to, I think, a real world job. So I left school and I had no idea what I was doing. And it was only until my second year of university doing classics, learning about Greeks and Romans and everything like that, that I got a pamphlet handed to me one day, which was a volunteer fair. and it was people were looking for volunteer work to do in their spare time between lectures, between lessons, then come along. We've got a fair. There's lots of different businesses and organizations that will be coming. Blah blah blah. And I turned up and I found out that the local wildlife rehabilitation center needed help. And so I was like, I had no idea what to expect, right? I was like, I've never worked with animals a day in my life. I like animals. Who doesn't? Like, that's great. But, I'm in my early 20s at this point, and I'm like, okay, animals. Yeah. I mean, how hard is it to take care of animals, right? Obviously, little did I know. But so I turned up and signed up to go along and spend some time volunteering at the local wildlife rehabilitation center. And, I tell this story a lot. So if you heard me talk about this on another podcast or another interview, then I apologize for this story. But my first ever job they gave me was they handed me a bowl of day-old baby chicks and some blunt scissors. And they said, okay, we need you to cut these into tiny pieces to feed the hedgehogs. And, I was like, that, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. And this was day one of volunteering. First task, they said, here, all right, okay, great. You signed the paperwork. Great. Okay, here's a bowl of dead baby chicks and a pair of scissors. And then just off you go. And I was like, okay, I got through it. I fed those little hedgehogs their bits of chick. It was very satisfying to see them kind of come snuffling out and eat their dead baby chick. And I was like, okay, this is actually great. I got through that. It's fine. And from there, it was just it snowballed. From there, I was there for a year and a half, volunteering my nights every Friday night and Saturday morning, which is like peak time for doing stuff in your 20s. Of
course, right?
Like Friday nights.
Went out to the club or going to the animal rehab.
Exactly.
Whatever.
I was like bored of alcohol. I'm going to go hang out with some hedgehogs and some badgers. So I would go and help the local wildlife rehab center. I noticed when job hunting that there was a zoo presenter job coming up at a local zoo, which was just giving talks about the animals, not necessarily zookeeping. So I applied for that and I got that, and I was doing talks of, hey guys, here are the penguins, I'm Alice, everything like that. From the back of that, I flew to America to actually where I learned to be a zookeeper was the States. And this is why I have such a big love for you guys. The States is my second home. I love Americans. I'm an American born in a British body. I fully believe that. In another life, I was an American. I love your country. It's a beautiful place. People are so friendly and warm. And I learned to be a zookeeper at Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, where I spent doing a 3-month internship. Fantastic place to learn how to zookeep. And I learned from some amazing keepers. And the technology, even back then, which was like 2012, 2013, was like unlike anything I've seen in the UK, because, American zoos have that money that UK zoos just don't. And so I really value my time there. And off of the back of that, I got my first, from doing these internships and from, going out and, traveling by myself. I flew out all the way to the States because I was like, I want to learn how to be a zookeeper, and I love America. So let me just see how that works out. And from there, I got my first job at London Zoo. So a bit of a weird way to go, but I think it's the lesson I try and give there is, it's okay to not know what you want to do at 18 years old, right? Like, I didn't have that, which is why I'm so jealous of you're like, I knew animals, great. I didn't have that same epiphany until in my sort of mid 20s. And that's great. It means you can find it at any time in your life and pivot towards it. It's never, ever too late to change it up. So that's my little nugget.
I appreciate that nugget very much. Right now, as a parent of a teenager, the discussion about, because schools want you to figure out your career now.
I know.
And I'm like, no, sweetheart, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm the exception to the rule, that I knew in middle school what I want to do with my life. So just go and explore. Try different things, lean into your passions. If you change your mind later, that's fine, Yeah. So I totally recognize my situation and scenario is completely obtuse compared to everybody else in the world.
I love it.
But I do love that you did eventually find this process for yourself. So I want to ask you, because I think this is a question I often get, people coming into the business of zookeeping, coming into the world of animal care and conservation, that are looking at zoos as their first step or their career path, maybe permanently, as far as they know. When I was at the San Diego Zoo, I had so many people just like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do to get in there? How did you get that job? And I've worked at small zoos and big zoos, and I have my opinions about both. I want to ask you, though, from your perspective and from your experience, because I feel on the zookeeper side of things, you are in the business a little more recently than I was. I stepped out of proper zookeeping in 2010 as I rolled into being. Yeah. So it was 2009, I was in a temporary position for spokesperson, stepping away from being in animal care. Went back to animal care for a few months, and then they pulled me back into being a permanent spokesperson in 2010. Wow. And so I did manage animal care teams at that point, but I wasn't doing the actual work. Yeah. And then I worked with the Moore Park students for a while, so I got a new perspective from the side of not being in the business yet and having aspirations and dreams, and also sort of perhaps a rose-colored tinted lens of the world at that point about what to do. Yeah. And so I have my experience working with small zoos and big zoos, but I want to ask you your opinion, because it's usually, the question is usually which is better. And I know there's not, my response to that was always, it depends on what you think better means.
Totally.
So I want your perspective, pluses and minuses of looking at, working at, starting at a big zoo versus small zoo. Pardon the interruption, dear listeners. I am going to break this interview into two parts. I've been getting some feedback that most of you prefer longer interviews broken into two parts instead of a very long episode. So that's what we're doing today. And I figured that spot where I asked that question is sort of a good transition from part one to part two. So make sure you follow, like, subscribe, whatever it takes, whether on YouTube or wherever you are, so you don't miss part two, which comes out tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I promise you. And if there's anything that Alice and I have talked about so far that you want more information on, I'll have all the links down below. As you know, we have all those show notes down there with social media, websites, everything else. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. And again, tomorrow morning, first thing, we'll have episode 2 coming out for you to listen to the rest of this lovely interview with the amazing Alice. Have a good one, everybody.